welcome to Crime in Court. This is actually a breaking news story, as you can see by the thumbnail, about the West Memphis Three. So one of the individuals, Damien Echols, who was convicted well, we're going to get to the whole story, so I'm just going to leave it to the story. But the three of them were convicted of a crime which, let's say, they very, very, very likely did not commit. So, I'm going to read to you, if you aren't familiar with the West Memphis Three, I'm going to, instead of me trying to sum it all up, I'm going to read an article about the West Memphis Three and about their wrongful conviction, and then get to the title of the story. I'm going to put timestamps, so if you don't really care about the overview of the West Memphis Three, then you can skip to the timestamp of this article that I'm going to go over, which is the Innocence Project statement in response to the Supreme Court. So we'll get to that. All right, so if you are not familiar with, zoom in a little bit here. All right, so if you are not familiar with the West Memphis Three, I'm going to give you a quick update about them and who they are, about their wrongful conviction and all that good stuff. So let's dive in. Excuse me. All right. West Memphis Three, what you should know about their wrongful conviction. They were convicted as teenagers, and the three of them have been working to clear their names for more than 30 years and are seeking a new DNA test. So this is a picture of Damien Echols. He is the individual that we are going to talk about most, probably, because he was sentenced because he was older. Sorry, I play with my hair a lot, but it bothers me. Probably bothers you too. All right. So he was the oldest member of the three. So the state decided to charge him, make an example out of him, make him the adult, and they went for the DP with him. So that is what he got when he was convicted. He got the DP as a sentence. And he was like 17. I don't even know if he was 18 yet. He was 18. Okay. I knew he was like right around there. All right, so this is Damien Echols. We'll get to his part of the story. All right, so Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly. So if you look at the thumbnail for this video, it goes from the far left, because if you're looking at the black and white photos, which are all of their mugshots. I couldn't think of the word. Thank you for whoever was shouting it out to me, because I couldn't remember. It worked. All right, so Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly. That is who they are in order from far left to right. So Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jesse Miss Kelly. These three are known as the West Memphis Three, and they have been trying to clear their names for 30 years, and this is why. This is the crime. All right, so in 1993, do you guys remember where you were? Were you born in 1993? Let me know in the comments below where you were in 1993. I think I was still in grade school. All right, so Mr. Miss Kelly, Mr. Baldwin, and Mr. Echols, 16, 17, and 18 respectively at the time, were arrested for the unalivings of 3 8-year-old boys in West Memphis, Arkansas. And the story about them is just horrific. And it's a tragedy what happened to those 3 boys. And it's a tragedy what happened to the West Memphis Three as well. They're all connected and intertwined in this just awful, heart-wrenching story. All right, so there were 3 little boys. They were all 8, and they were found in a creek area. All right, so although No physical evidence or motive tied them to the crime. The teens were all convicted. Both Mr. and Miss Kelly and Mr. Baldwin were given life sentences, while Mr. Echols, who the prosecution argued had led the attack, was sentenced to DP. All right, so in the 3 decades since the West... Sorry, I couldn't get the screen to cooperate for me. See, it's like skipping all the way up when I'm not ready to skip up. Stop that. I hate these headers that move with what you're reading. All right, so in the 3 decades since the West Memphis Three were convicted, DNA technology has rapidly evolved. Obviously, since 1993, I don't even think that they knew that they could multiply it and do all these things to it to make it like little minute samples bigger so that they can actually test, and do multiple tests with it, because you need to have multiple tests to recreate the same conclusion or the same ending result, and you need to get you need the proof of that. So if there's DNA at a crime scene, you need to be able to test it multiple times. Like one little piece of DNA found at a crime scene, you need what are they called? I can't think of the word. It's all sciencey. You need like your baseline average to like find what that is. So you need to do multiple tests, because some tests you can have anomalies in the DNA, and it's really important that you're able to recreate the same result multiple times. Anyways, so in the 3 decades since the West... I don't know why I went off on that, but anyways, all right. So in the 3 decades since the West Memphis Three were convicted, DNA technology has rapidly evolved. In 2007, DNA testing excluded the 3 from all of the crime scene evidence, tested and detected DNA of a man who could not be identified at the time. So all 3 were excluded from the sample, and there was another man that they could not identify. Today's advances in DNA technology mean that DNA that could not previously be recovered from evidence, including shoelaces used to bind the boys. Yes, they were bound, like hog-tied. Awful. And naked. It's awful. It's an awful, awful, awful crime. Whoever did it with intent and malice, and I really think it might have been one of the stepdads or, family related. Usually it's someone close to you that's gonna off you. Just remember that. Anyways, so if you take nothing else from any of my videos, so today's advances in DNA technology mean that DNA that could not previously be recovered from evidence, including shoelaces, can now be tested and can lead to the identification of the person who actually committed the crime. However, last year, whenever this was, so when was this article written? 2023. So in 2022, a Crittenden County judge denied Mr. Echols' request for new DNA testing of the evidence because he is no longer in prison, which is the dumbest thing. While some other state laws only allow incarcerated people to access post-conviction DNA testing, Arkansas statute does not limit access to testing to those who are currently incarcerated. So the reason that they're giving him isn't a reason. It's not legit. So they're just lying to him. Mr. Echols has now taken his appeal to the Arkansas Supreme Court. So, what does that mean? I hate this header. Can I turn the header off? No? Okay. Preventing people from seeking DNA testing after their release from prison impedes justice and would have prevented the exoneration of several wrongly convicted people like Christopher Tapp, Tyrone Day, Marvin Anderson, and Eddie Lowry, just to name 4. I'm going to make sure that's how many fingers I had up. Oh no, I missed, 5. 1, 2, 3, 5. Sorry. Marvin Anderson is 1. All right, so 4 whose names were all cleared by DNA testing years after they were released. I mean, you want to clear your name. When you are convicted of a crime and you're let out of prison on an Alfred plea, which is eventually what they all did, and we'll get to all of this. I mean, I'm going to go into this like way, way, way in depth in my channel at some point, but right now I'm just trying to give you guys like the highlights, and I can't even because there's so much in this case. But so I don't remember what I was saying. All right, let's continue on. It probably was not, it didn't matter. It was something about, I don't know. Justice for the victims in this case and the West Memphis 3 should not be denied simply because they are no longer incarcerated. They should not be penalized and robbed of the opportunity to clear their names because they are free. That's basically what I was going to say. That I think that was my point, was just because they're out of prison, like they took the Alfred plea and that got them out, basically admitting, we think you have enough to convict us, but we're denying that we did it. But the state still, in their eyes, thinks that they did it. So they're still convicted felons, even though they took this Alfred plea to get out of prison. So that follows you everywhere you go. You can't even apply for a job without saying, have you ever been convicted? So, I mean, obviously these men who didn't commit these crimes want their names cleared. They want justice for themselves because they're victims in these stories too. They are absolute victims of an inadequate justice system, a very flawed justice system. Although people say it's the greatest one, but how do we know? There's so many issues with it. But anyways, all right. So this is what, did I read the top one? Yeah, they want their names to be cleared. That is why on June 2nd of 2023, the Innocence Project filed an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, offering our expertise based on our experience with DNA testing and innocence claims to the Arkansas. I wonder if that amicus brief is actually available to read. That'd be interesting. No, it's a press release, but maybe... Oh, you can. You can download the brief here. Interesting. I might look at that. If you guys are interested, I might read that on my page or on my channel. All right, so let me flag that so I remember. Yeah, put it in the West Memphis 3 folder. There we go. I'll come back to that, but not in this video. All right, so that's why you should subscribe. Make sure that the notification bell is on so that when I do an episode of the amicus brief, you get a notification. All right, so that is why on June 2nd, the Innocence Project files an amicus brief offering our expertise based on our experience with DNA testing and innocence claims to the Arkansas Supreme Court, supporting Mr. Echols' appeal for new DNA testing of the evidence in his case. And if you go to innocenceproject.org, and this was actually in the stories, you can find or search West Memphis 3, and there is a link you can click on and add your name to support the West Memphis 3 to get fully exonerated from all of these crimes. All right, so how did this happen? Here's what you should know about the West Memphis 3 and their fight for justice. So at the time when they were arrested, convicted, there was this thing called satanic panic. If you're not familiar or were born at that time, it was basically everybody thought everybody were Satan worshipers. And you would call people out, like anything weird or different, you're a Satan worshiper. And you're going to find that, I mean, look at Echols right here. This is a more recent photo, but I mean, this is how he portrayed himself back then. He had the long hair, he, wore the colored glasses, and he had tattoos, and he was he was into Wicca and things like that. So people are automatically like, oh my God, he's Satanist. So that was a lot of the impression back then. Oh, and he wore all black. So obviously he worshipped Satan. I wear all black all the time too. I don't worship Satan. All right, so Mr. Echols, Mr. Baldwin, and Mr. Miss Kelly consistently maintained their innocence, but the prosecution argued that the teens had ended the boys' lives as part of a satanic ritual. Thousands of allegations against innocent people, including the Santonio Four, I'll have to do an episode on those too, arose during the 1980s and 90s as a result of a mass media scare known as satanic panic. And it is mass media scare. It's like, oh my God, the bird flu. Woo, everybody be scared. COVID, I mean, yes, there was reasons to be scared, but not as scared. Anyways, satanic panic. That's mostly mass media fueled going after people who are different, just the different people. So several people were wrongly accused of CA during the Satanic Panic era and have since been exonerated. So I will definitely do some more on the San Antonio Four. Or did I? No, who are the San Antonio Four? Let's see. Let's just see who the San Antonio Four are real quick, since, I mean, why not? Oh, they are made out to be horrible monsters. How homophobia led to the wrongful conviction of 4 Texas women. Oh, no. I do know the story, though. I'm familiar with the story. I've seen programs on it. So I'm definitely flagging that. I'll come back to that. I remember that story. All right. So, yeah, satanic panic. But it's all made up BS. Most of it, anyways. I don't know if there were real Satan worshippers around, but there definitely were people that weren't, that were being accused of it. So, there's that. All right, so the coerced confessions. Mr. Miss Kelly, so look at the thumbnail again, is the one on the farthest right of the 3 black and white photos. And Echols is obviously in the colored photo and the far left. All right, so coerced confession. Mr. Miss Kelly, who has an intellectual disability. And where does that sound familiar, guys? If you've been following my channel and watching the Stephen Avery case with me, Brendan Dassey, hello, and Stephen, both intellectually, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say the wrong thing, so please don't be offended. Intellectually disabled, I'll say, because that's the wording that they use here. Don't be mad if you're offended. I'm sorry. All right, so both Stephen and Brendan both have intellectual disabilities, I would say. Both have very low IQs, both have, Brendan especially was very, very susceptible to manipulation by the officers. They're susceptible to suggestions. So if you throw out, usually these coerced confessions are like, they beat you down until your confidence is low, and then after they've already talked to you about a bunch of the things that have happened in the case, then that's when they start drilling you for questions, and then you fill in the answers because you're scared and you feel pressured, and they've already given you the answers. So when you say a blue car, that's because they told you 20 minutes ago, I know you were in that blue car. So they fed that to you. And it goes like that all the time in these cases, especially with intellectual disabilities. So Miss Kelly gave a confession after hours of coercive and intimidating interrogations, which were not taped. And that's a problem. And that's a common theme in these coerced confessions. Or they only tape the very end. They talk to the individual for 6 hours straight here, and then they just tape like the last 30, 40 minutes of the conversation when he finally starts to break down and confess. Frustrating. All right, so during these interrogations, Mr. and Miss Kelly, still a child, how old was he again? 14? Respectfully, he was 16. He was 16, Baldwin 17, Echols 18. All right, where was I now? So, confession not taped. During the interrogation, Mr. and Miss Kelly, still a child, was not accompanied by any parents or attorneys. None of them were. Both young people and people with intellectual disabilities are especially vulnerable to falsely confessing when subjected to police deception and intimidation. It's in black and white, folks. We have the studies on this stuff. I mean, we know better now. We should. Mr. and Miss Kelly's confession was filled with details that did not match the crime scene evidence, yet the prosecution used it against Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Kelly and Mr. Echols with the crime. Mr. and Miss Kelly later recanted, and he refused to testify against Baldwin and Echols at trial, and his confession was barred from their trials. But it didn't matter because the damage was done. They already arrested them all, and once you've got your bad guy, you don't need to keep looking. So you've got your bad guy. They're sitting in prison, even though none of the information that Miss Kelly gave you matches up. Anyways. All right, so DNA has not connected them to the crime. We know this. We know that there is DNA that is not theirs that was at the crime. So whose is that, and why aren't we trying to find them? So that is why Damien Echols wants this DNA testing, and rightfully he should have it. Clear his name. All right, well, let me know in the chat, do you think that he should be able to test this DNA after so many years and after he's been out? He's not incarcerated anymore, even though he's still a convict, technically. All right, so based on the results of the 2007 DNA testing, the men were offered a plea deal in exchange for their release. It's called an Alford plea. Alford plea. It's hard to say. It's not like Alfred, it's Alford. It just reminds me of like the Handmaid's Tale where they're like of Fred. Off Fred. Sorry, never mind. All right, so Alford. Mr. Echols was on DP. He had a DP facing execution for the third time, so they accepted it. So he had gone through many, many appeals, and he was back or still facing execution. And or maybe it had to have been like they waived it, appealed it, whatever, got it pushed back, his dates pushed back. So in order to avoid Damien Echols to have to deal with losing his life because the investigators refused to investigate the actual evidence, so yeah, he was about to lose his life in prison. So they took this plea, basically saying that, well, here it says a type of plea that allows a person to maintain their innocence, but acknowledge that prosecutors have enough evidence that could result in a conviction at trial. Well, shouldn't that mean that they aren't a convict anymore? But no, that is what the plea is. So you sign it and you say, okay, good riddance. I don't have to be in this place anymore. But for the rest of your life, you are considered a convict, no matter what. So that is why they did that, why they signed, or why they took the plea to avoid him going to the DP. All right, so, or DR, whatever, you know what I mean. All right, so in 2001, they were released after signing the plea. New DNA testing could uncover the truth. So, advances in DNA testing mean that today's tests are more sensitive. New techniques can successfully recover DNA from items, including porous materials like fabric, that could not previously be tested. In the case of the West Memphis Three, that means the shoelaces used to tie up the children who had their lives ended could be tested. So the children, the shoelaces that were bound around their hands and feet can be used. That was basically the only piece of evidence that was left. I mean, the boys had no clothing on. There was some clothing, like I believe their clothing might have been off to the side, like in a pile or whatever on the ground. I can't remember now. It's been so long. If you guys are not familiar with this case, and if you have HBO, I highly, highly, highly recommend watching Paradise Lost. There's like 3 or 4 like really long. They're documentaries. It's a documentary before docuseries like Netflix came along. So it's like binging the whole thing, and it's like binging a whole season in one, but it's only 3 episodes for you. So, but there's time lapsed in between. Like they made them within multi years apart. So anyways, definitely go see those if you haven't watched them. They're excellent. I kind of want to watch them again. Anyways, so advances in DNA testing, more sensitive techniques, da 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 da. All right, so in the case of the West Memphis Three, that means the shoelaces can be tested. This testing could lead to the identification of the person or people who actually committed the crime, because that's the other crime within a crime, is that this crime has never been solved because the investigators stopped looking the minute they coerced a confession out of a 16-year-old without an adult present. I mean, can it get any more sickening than that? So you can take action. Add your name to the petition. Like I said, I recommended to do before. You can also text Memphis to 97016 to receive breaking news about this case. You can share their story on Twitter and Instagram. You can watch Paradise Lost, like I said, and what's west of Memphis? And read The Devil's Knot, the true story of the West Memphis Three. These are all good resources. What is... Ooh, I'm going to have to... Oh, it's a trailer. Where do I find the actual movie? West of Memphis. I don't know. Here's a book. The book. Who is it written by? Let's see. Mara Leverett. The true story of the West Memphis Three. Is it on Audible? Maybe I'll download it there. All right. So that's, I guess, the official book that the West Memphis Three are saying is, a good... Oh my God, I was like, what is that? This is the trailer for this movie. What happened? Stopped. Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh. All right. Peter Jackson is behind this. I did not know that. Not that that matters, but interesting. I want to see if it's a Sony Classic movie. I don't know, but it's a Peter Jackson film. should not be playing this with this music. I don't want to get a strike, but all right, so I'll stop there. But anyway, so go watch this film. It's a Sony picture. I'm gonna see if I can find it on if it's on like Amazon Prime or somewhere. Yeah, so that's good. You can also order the book. I said free book. What? No, we don't want that right now. All right, so that is basically the overview of the West Memphis 3, and there's some resources you can go and find out more. But here is what I am most interested in learning about, and people who are interested or already know about this case want to hear. So this is an announcement, a statement from the Innocence Project in response to the Arkansas Supreme Court ruling in the Damien Echols DNA testing request. So Mr. Echols, along with Jason Baldwin and Miss okay, that one's, we know that. This was breaking news the 18th of April. So I have not heard anything about this. I just happened to come upon this article on the Innocence Project's website, and I was like, what? So this is breaking news, and this is a big deal. I mean, this is a big deal that they're going to be granted DNA testing. So today, April 18th of 2024, the Supreme Court ruled that Damien Echols of the West Memphis 3 is entitled to petition. Did they give us the actual the ruling? Oh, they did. What? Thank you, Innocence Project. Let's look at that, if it ever loads. Cool. Okay. So the Arkansas Supreme Court ruled that Damien Echols of the West Memphis 3 is entitled to petition an Arkansas court for new DNA testing of crime scene evidence in the 1993 taking of the lives of the 3 boys. Mr. Echols, along with Jason Baldwin and Jason Miskelly, have been wrongfully convicted for the last 30 years. Last June, Innocence Project attorneys filed an amicus brief to the court supporting Mr. Echols' appeal for testing with new DNA technology in the hopes of clearing his name and his co-defendants. So not only him, so if he wins this appeal, he can clear himself, but he can also clear Miskelly and Baldwin. So this is a big deal. This is a huge deal. I'm surprised, like, it hasn't been all over the news. I don't know. Maybe it's not that big of a deal to people who don't care about true crime. I think it's a big deal. This case, like, really haunts me. All right, especially because, like, they're similar in age to me, like, not that much older, and it could have happened to any one of us in any one of our towns during this time with this satanic panic thing going on. So, a Crittenden County judge had previously denied Mr. Echols' request for new DNA testing because he is no longer in prison. So we read about that. That was in 2022. 2022. But while some states only allow incarcerated individuals access to the post-conviction relief, Arkansas does not provide such a limit. So today, the Arkansas Supreme Court found that the trial court incorrectly read that limitation into the law. This ruling brings justice one step closer for the West Memphis 3 and potentially for many more wrongfully convicted people seeking DNA testing in Arkansas. In 2007, DNA testing of crime scene evidence excluded all 3 men and instead detected DNA of another man who could not be identified. Advances in DNA technology since then mean that DNA can now be recovered from critical evidence, including the shoelaces that were used to bind the boys, that could identify the actual perpetrator and scientifically prove the innocence of Mr. Echols, Mr. Baldwin, and Mr. Miskelly. So over more than 3 decades, the Innocence Project has helped exonerate 202 people with DNA testing. And according to the National Registry of Exonerations, 596 people across the United States have been exonerated with the help of DNA since 1989. That's a lot, and that's not even the tip of the iceberg of all the people that have been incarcerated, wrongfully convicted, and we'll never know about them because DNA's long gone. The people who served their time, and they're long gone. I mean, yeah, it's amazing. So if we have that many that we know about, think about how many people we don't know. Yeah, it's depressing, but these exonerations underscore the critical importance of ensuring access to scientific testing when technology advances. So, not just the fact that, you can test it, but you should test it because technology has advanced at this point in time, like so much. And you can go back and recreate and multiply certain strands. You can do so much more than like we ever expected we could. And yet we're not testing. If these people want the testing and they say, "Hey, I'm innocent, please test for this DNA," I don't understand why it's not done, especially when a guilty person isn't going to ask for a DNA test. So I don't know. It's all confusing, our justice system. It's very, very interesting. So I definitely am going to do a much deeper dive on the West Memphis Three, but right now I'm doing a deep dive on Stephen Avery from Wisconsin versus Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey. So that's taken me a while, and I'm going through the trial too, and transcripts. So it's going to be a little while before I am able to do a West Memphis 3 video deep dive, but just letting you guys know it's in the works, or at least it's up here. I'm going to make it happen one of these days. So thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you think in the chat and or in the comments below. Give this video a like on your way out if you liked it, and please subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye now. If you've been impacted by a true crime and would like your story told in your own words, or if you or someone you know has been wrongfully convicted or accused of a crime, please write to crimeincourtchannel@gmail.com and tell us your real true crime encounters. Thanks for watching.